This is an extract from the Leader podcast by the Evening Standard. The whole thing is available on all major podcast providers.
In January, up to 90 volunteers in London could be deliberately injected through the nose with COVID-19. For 2.5 weeks, they'll be kept at Royal Free Hospital for a world-first so-called human challenge study for coronavirus. If it goes ahead, from May, researchers will start testing the efficacy of vaccines. Dr. Chris Chiu from the Department of Infectious Disease and the study's lead researcher joins me. Dr. Chiu, what exactly is a human challenge study?
Volunteers are deliberately inoculated with a virus or a bacterium, and the aim of these is to cause an infection in some of the volunteers, and then to look at how the infection progresses and understand what aspects of the immune system, the person's response, change the infection. And using that, you can also build in vaccination. So if you vaccinate a group of people and then compare them with a group of unvaccinated people, when you challenge them with the virus or bacterium, the vaccinated people, if the vaccine works, should have less infection.
With the COVID-19 virus, are there any particular challenges it poses?
Well, I think the major challenge is the fact that it's such a new disease, a new infection. So what we don't have is information about the long-term potential symptoms that are associated with COVID-19. Having said that, though, we do know that certain populations, certain groups of people are at very low risk of getting severe disease or severe outcomes, and that mainly is young people. We're very confident that if we restrict, at least for the first study, the entry of volunteers to 18 to 30-year-olds, then the likelihood of perhaps even symptoms is going to be very low.
So what does the first stage of the study involve?
The very first study is to characterize the virus, which has been made to very high medicine standard cleanliness and quality. And at the moment, we don't know how much of that virus we need to give to people to cause an infection. So what we're doing in the first study is just starting with a very tiny amount of virus, giving it to small groups of volunteers into their noses and seeing whether that causes an infection. We may need to gradually creep up and give more virus to get to that a reproducible level of infection. At that point, we would then start thinking about testing vaccines.
Who will get these doses of the COVID-19 vaccine and under what conditions?
We're doing everything we can to make this as safe as possible for anybody who ends up volunteering for this study. And so the ways that we do that are first by selecting people that we know are going to be at the least risk of developing more severe COVID disease. Mainly that's in terms of age. So as I said, 18 to 30-year-olds, we know from studies of natural infection are at extremely low risk of getting severe disease. And then within that age group, we're also going to be screening people and making sure they don't have any other medical problems which might put them at higher risks. And then we would also be doing a lot of blood tests, x-rays and so on to make sure that there is nothing else that they were unaware of that might make them more at risk of more severe disease.
The hope that this will speed up the vaccine is the headline today, but will it also help with answering the other big questions around why some people get the virus worse than others or how long people develop antibodies for?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the other real strength of human challenge studies, that because we know about people's immune status and immune responses before they get infected with the virus, and then we can follow them up all the way through the infection and as they recover, we have a really detailed understanding of what happens to their immune responses, their reaction to the infection. And the aim will be to, even from this very first study, start to investigate some of those and look for the factors which may predispose some people to getting infected, whereas other people might be more resistant to disease. And there are also plans to look at the duration of immunity and how long those immune responses last for.
In terms of vaccine development, will this speed things up in terms of rolling one out?
The challenge studies can speed that up, that efficacy testing process, because by the end of this first study, we'll know what proportion of people get infected when you challenge them with the virus. And that is usually going to be 60 or 70% of the participants. And that means you don't have to rely on people randomly encountering the virus in the community. You know that 60% or more of your group are going to get infected. And that means that you can test efficacy using maybe only 100 people or maybe up to 200 people, compared with tens of thousands in the field trials. And if you do that early in the process, a vaccine which doesn't seem to give you any protection at all, you could decide not to progress with, and prioritize vaccines which do seem to give you some protection at that early stage.